Good evening, and thank you for taking the time to join me this evening. I just want to spend 25-30 minutes maybe talking to you about things you can do to help your son or daughter prepare for the external exams that they're about to be facing. And it's going to be broken down into two categories really. One is the physical preparation, for getting themselves ready and organised before the exams in terms of equipment and those sorts of things. And the other is the mental preparation, the revision, the learning of the subjects and that area. So the first thing really in terms of making sure they're ready to take the exams is to check the exam timetable carefully. So first thing to make sure you know is what subjects they're doing, and they need to make sure they're clear on what subjects they're doing. Hopefully they all know that. Also checking the exam timetable, making sure if they're in year 11 they're looking for those GCSE exams and highlighting on that timetable where their exams are and what time, so they know exactly where they have to be, when, and can plan their time around that. Now, it's important to point out at this point that the exam timetable, that is presented to us by Edexcel and Cambridge. They produce their exam timetable and we have to follow that. So we don't have any choice of when any of these exams are. The exam boards give us the timetable and say this exam will take place on this date at this time. Okay, now one of the things that you can see on the timetable I've got on the screen is one of the exams there that Edexcel Business Studies is highlighted in like a salmon colour, like a pale pink. Now that's because there is a clash of exams. So at that time there is both a geography exam and a business studies exam going on. Now in this case you can see that both that geography and business studies exam are both due to start at 11:30. Now what will happen in that case is any student, when it tells me there's three students doing that exam, doing business and geography, they will sit the geography exam first. They will then, when they finish their geography exam, they'll be supervised in school without access to their phones, without access and communication to the people who've taken the other exam. They will then go and sit their business studies exam afterwards. So anytime that a student sees or you see that there's a clash and there's two exams at the same time, there should be on the timetable an exam highlighted in pink, which shows us that some students will be sitting that exam at a slightly later time and they'll have to be supervised by school staff between those exams. But please make sure you and your son and daughter know when their exams are and what time they are. I've had several instances where I've had to ring home to students to say they're meant to be an exam, and the student has said, oh, it's this afternoon, and we're there about to start the exam. So please make sure that they know when it is, and that obviously makes sure they can be organised. Obviously, we've got 3 weeks of school left, and then it's the Eid break. They need to make sure during that Eid break that they are sorted for the exams and have everything they need. Right? They will need the exam papers all say write in black ink on the front of them. So they'll need several black pens. One black biro is not enough. They don't want to be in that position where they're stressed because their pens run out in the exam and having to ask the invigilators for extra equipment and things like that. They need to be organised, make sure they've got several black pens, pencils, erasers, sharpeners, those sorts of things, a calculator, ruler, protractor, set square, the maths equipment that they might need. Now, the exam rules are such that they can't take in their normal pencil case. It has to be a clear plastic pencil case, and a clear plastic freezer bag works fine. They just need something that is clear so that the invigilators, the exams officer, myself, we can see that there's nothing written inside their pencil case to help them. Highlighters are also useful for them to have because they might want to highlight keywords in the questions, or if they've got a text to read, they might want to highlight little bits of the text to draw their mind back to it as they're going through it. A couple of things on the equipment. With their calculator, they won't be allowed to take in the calculator cover, so the little piece of plastic that slides onto the calculator to protect the face, they're not allowed to bring that into the exam, so they want to make sure they leave that at home. And I know a lot of them have the little math set with the ruler, protractor and the set square and the compasses and stuff in there. Again, all that stuff needs to come out of that metal tin and put into the plastic pencil case. So it just makes their entrance to the exam easier if they're turning up knowing they've got what they need and aren't panicking at the start of the exam thinking, oh, I've forgotten this, I've forgotten my pen. And I would say they should have a pencil case that they bring to every exam so that they're ready and prepared and they're not having to worry about packing it each day. One thing that's really important is to make sure the students are following regular sleep patterns and getting enough rest. I know with teenagers it can be a fight at times with them with bedtimes and getting up in the mornings and things like this, but keeping a regular routine will help them. It's also, they need to have it made clear to them, and they need to realise that there's no point staying up till 2 in the morning revising if then your exam's the next day and you're too tired to think and you can't remember anything you did in your revision because you just want to sleep. Okay, so they need to set regular times and work in that manner. I would also strongly recommend that they use the mornings productively. That they are not, that they're getting up through those holidays, through their study leave, getting up early, getting on with their work and getting started earlier in the day, because then they can make the most of the day and leave time for exercise and downtime, which is very important in managing stress levels. So although they have to focus on their exams and their studies, it's really important that they don't neglect exercise and their physical health, because that helps them manage their stress. It helps them mentally refresh, and is a really important part of the process of the revision is actually them having some time where they're getting their heart rate up and they're doing some exercise to keep them healthy and their stress levels down. Now, for a lot of these students, in fact, for virtually all of them, this will be the first time they've sat formal external exams, with the exams having been disrupted by COVID for the last 2 years. So they will be feeling that pressure, and so managing that stress is a really important part of it. On the day of the exam, they need to come dressed as they would if they were coming to school. So normal school uniform. Now, if that's sixth form, that's shirt and tie. Lower in year 11s, it's their standard school uniform that they would be wearing. I'd always say they should bring a jumper with them. Obviously, they're set up in desks around the rooms and around the exam hall. If you just happen to be under one of the AC vents, you could find yourself feeling a bit cold in that exam, and having a jumper with you will make that much easier. And if you're warm, you can always take it off. You don't be sat there thinking, I haven't got that. If they're bringing water into during the exam, it needs to be in a clear water bottle, so with no labels on, just a clear plastic bottle again, so that everyone can see that nothing's written in there. Breakfast here is an important one again. I know a lot of our students aren't great at eating in the morning, but on their exam days and through their revision, I think getting into the habit of having a breakfast, making sure they turn up having eaten to keep their energy levels up, is very important. They don't want to find themselves in the exam hungry, flagging, running out of energy. So making sure they're well fueled and are eating well, and that also goes for the evenings before. Making sure that they're eating healthily and have had a good breakfast is important on those days of the exams. Arrive in plenty of time. Okay, so students don't want to be rushing at the last minute and having to sort of run into school and straight into the exam. They want to make sure that they're here plenty of time before the exam starts, so they can decompress a little bit, have a breath or two outside, get lined up into the exam hall in an orderly fashion, and not stressing in the car about time and those sorts of things. So if you're bringing them in, make sure they come in plenty of time. If they're having to get an Uber in, again, talk to them, make sure that they're booking it well in advance so that you know they're going to be here plenty of time, so that it's not an extra source of panic. There's enough for them to stress about on the exam days without being late being an issue. Now, when it comes to actually starting their revision, them sitting down, they need a good area in which to revise. Now, either a table somewhere in the house that is their dedicated revision table, whether that's in their room, on a landing, but somewhere where they can work undisturbed. Okay, so the coffee table in the living room is not the place for them to be revising. There's going to be a lot going on in that room. It's going to be hard for them to be focused if they're there. Okay. Ideally, they want their desk needs to be tidy. And I know a lot of you looking at the word tidy and seeing your teenagers and thinking that isn't how they operate, but trying to make sure that their desk is clear so that when they come to sit down and get their notes out for chemistry or maths, they can spread their notes out for that subject and have what they need to hand. They finish revising that subject, that stuff gets packed away and a different subject comes out. But being organised and tidy in their revision helps them know where their stuff is. It makes it easy for them to access the materials they need. And again, it helps them be calm about their revision. And that's a really important aspect for them. And the room should be free from distraction. Now, there will be times when they might be on the internet revising and looking at things, but there'll be plenty of times when they won't. So they shouldn't be sat watching Netflix on their phone or going through their social media while they're revising. So there definitely, in my opinion, should be times when they're revising and their phone and their laptop isn't necessarily in their room. Okay? So sometimes they will need it if they're accessing material off the internet and trying to search out things, but there should also be times when, so you don't need that at the minute, try and do it that way. And for them, they will find if they leave their phone outside the room whenever they can, their revision will be more productive because they won't be tempted to go on all the social media apps. The other option, of course, is to sit with them and them to make a mature decision to say, I've got 8 weeks here, I'm going to take some of this social media apps off my phone to avoid those distractions. Now, listening to music can help them revise, but really it wants to be relatively quiet and instrumental music. Loud music that they're sitting there singing along to will be distracting them from their revision and not helping. Okay, so yes, a little bit of music isn't a problem, but it's the volume and the type of the music that can be helpful rather than having something they're singing along to. So try and work with them to make sure you're providing them with a space where they can revise and not be distracted, but also where they're taking a bit of responsibility as well by removing distractions themselves, because they need to realize they've got to get into these habits to help them do well. So they should have started making a revision plan, and this is an important part of their process. And obviously, the plan will adapt and change as they get nearer the exams and the holidays come and they're no longer in school. But you need to help them with this plan in that you need to agree what times are they going to revise, when are you going to eat, and when will they have free time. So there's no good them having a revision plan and them not being able to stick to it because of external factors. So you know as a family what time you eat dinner, and so make an agreement, right, for the next few weeks, that's when dinner will be, so that's when you need to put your revision down and we're going to eat together as a family. And that's when you're going to have your free time. And if you can see their plan, then you can have those conversations with them as well and say, well, hang on, it's 6 o'clock on a Sunday. I thought you said you were doing biology now. Okay. And equally, you need to help them stick to that by not suddenly saying, oh, we're all going to go here, we're going to go out there. If you are going to be doing things that make them adjust their plan, talk to them in advance so that they can see, oh, well, I'll have to make an adjustment the day before because we're going out for whoever's birthday or whatever. So they're not feeling stressed that things are sprung upon them and they're suddenly having to miss revision sessions that they're expected to do. Now, I've put in there, in that little sort of example of a little snippet of a revision plan, I've put in their free time. There's a limit to how much they can do in any evening or any day, and they need that downtime. So plan that as well. If they have regular clubs that they take part in, put those into the revision plan. Okay, there's no point saying you're going to be revising chemistry at 7 o'clock on a Monday if actually that's when you do kickboxing or football or whatever it is. So make sure that those things are scheduled into the plan. Now, the other thing students like to do with revision plans is they like to spend 3 or 4 hours making one on a Saturday, not really stick to it in the week, and then the weekend think, well, I didn't stick to my plan, I need to make a new one, and spend another 3 or 4 hours making a new plan. We need to not let them fall into that habit. Okay, so they make one plan and they stick to it as best as they can, and you're trying to help them avoid that procrastination and that spending time making another plan, because that's just putting off the actual work they need to be doing. Now, in terms of their revision, they really want to be breaking it down into manageable chunks. You cannot sit down and think, I'm now going to do 3 hours maths revision, because you find yourself an hour into it, staring at the page, not learning anything. And they need to make sure that their revision is productive. There is no point in them coming to you saying, I've done 4 hours maths revision, and you going, great, but your son or daughter thinking, I can't remember any of it, I'm just so tired and I was so switched off. So 45 to 50 minutes is about the right length of time as a sort of a focus on one subject. And then they should have a 10-minute break, a short break. Now, they have to be strict with themselves on this, and you might have to help them with that. As yes, it's good they should take a break, but that short break shouldn't be an hour. It's 10 minutes, just get out the room, get a drink, get something to drink, maybe a little snack, stretch the legs, back in, and then start something different. Okay, and getting them into those disciplined routines will help them, because for 50 minutes they can focus on a subject and it'd be useful. The break just clears their mind, then they can go back to something else. Okay, and again, 2 or 3 sessions of 50 minutes back to back is about the limit as well, I'd have thought. Okay, before they need a longer break. Now, in school we have 3 50-minute lessons in a row, and certainly if they tried to do another lesson after that without any break, the students would be mentally struggling to be focused in that lesson. So they need to bear that in mind, and you need to bear that in mind when talking to them about their revision. Now, all of us will remember spending time revising at some point, and they need to make the sessions productive. So that, I know students will often think, I'm going to revise by sitting and just reading through my textbook or my notes. And that isn't going to work for 95 to 99% of the students. They'll find themselves reading pages, turning the page, and not really having any idea what they've read on the page because they're just switched off. Okay? So when they're revising, they should be able to show you what they've produced. So if they've done 50 minutes biology, there should be something that they have done. Okay? Now that's either they've made some notes or they've answered some questions, and if you said to them, all right, you've done 50 minutes biology, show me what you did, they should be able to say, oh, I made these revision notes, or I answered these questions, so that you can see and they can show you what they've done. Okay, so please just keep ensuring that they are using that time productively and they're actually actively revising rather than just passively hoping that it will go in. Now, on the making notes front, this again is one where students have to find a way that works for them. Okay, for some subjects they'll have up to 2 years of notes from 2 years of study. So the GCSE students, they've spent 18 months, 2 years studying those courses. Now, I would be suggesting that the first thing they want to do is for each unit or topic, depending on how the subject's broken down, they want to try and summarize that onto 1 page of A4. Now, they might struggle with that at first. It might end up being 2 sides, but it's about taking all that information and reducing it down to the key points that they really need to know. And once they've done that, that really means that they don't need to go through that big bulk of notes or the big bulk of the textbook again. They've got their 1-page summary of that topic. Now, as they go through and get more and more confident, it then is about trying to take your 1-page summary for each topic and end up with almost a one-sheet summary for the whole syllabus, where you need, and you can do this, they can do this because as they revise and they learn, they need fewer and fewer prompts to recall the information. Right? But condensing those notes, and use colour in those notes to help the summaries be memorable. Now that means either if you've got little different topics on each page, do each topic in a slightly different colour, or always put the headings in the same colour, definitions in another colour, those sorts of things. It's not just about making it multicoloured. If you write every letter in a different colour and say, well, I'm using colour, it just becomes a jumbled mess. The colours should help you remember. Whether the students can look at it and go, oh, that was on my revision sheet, it was in blue, it was in this corner. It should be so that when they're in the exam, it helps them retrieve that information and therefore makes it more memorable. Now, different students will have different ways in which they like to make notes. Personally, I always made notes in the bullet point style of breaking up into sections and headings and putting a chunk of key information, new section and heading. Some people really like mind maps, where they place the key points and have branches coming off, and add keywords and key descriptions. Again, a perfectly good way to revise. Or revision cards, whether they're flashcards or facts, they're a really good way to summarize topics, revise, and you can use them to test yourself. Now, how we use these notes is also an important part of it. So they have to be useful for the student. So you have to talk to them about making sure that when they're making notes, they take a bit of pride in them so that they will look back at them and can remember them and go back to them time and time again. If they just scribble them in a really scruffy way, it will just become a scrappy bit of paper. So they need to take a bit of pride in them and look after them. Now, again, these last two slides are slides that we've also sort of shared with the students. So you should be looking at their notes. If they've made revision notes, look at them. All right, show me what you've done. And you can then see, are they organising their ideas? And you can help keep track on them that way and support them in that way. Have they colour-coded stuff? Can you see a structure in what they're doing? Can you see the different points? Because really what you want them to be able to do is explain ideas from their summary to you. Because if they can explain it to you, they'll be able to explain it to the examiner. Now, one of the things I've often said to students is if they make a good mind map, so if we go back and look at the previous mind map, make a good mind map or a really good bullet point sheet, a colour photocopy of it that's then laminated, you can make a few of those. So for one subject, you've got 2 or 3 laminated sheets. They can almost be your placemats at dinner, and you can test them before you sit down to eat. Right, you said you were doing biology. Right, 3 questions. Can you tell me about the advantages of organic fertilizers? What are the disadvantages? Those, and it allows you to have a quick check with them as to how they're getting on and checking their understanding. Okay. Now, once they've made their notes, that should be then their help for when they're doing exam questions. They shouldn't be then going back through the textbooks, back through their exercise books. It should be a case of, I've got my revision notes, I'm trying to answer these exam questions. I should be able to do it from my revision notes. The other thing I've mentioned, laminating them. Having information stuck up around the house, is a really good way to get information and help them revise without it seeming an onerous task. So, I think there's lots of places around the house where you could stick a revision sheet that they will spend several minutes looking at each day without really being aware of it. Put one by the bathroom mirror so that when they're cleaning their teeth in the morning, there's some revision notes for one of the subjects. Put one on the kitchen cupboard so when they come to get a cup of coffee or whatever they're doing, it's there. While they're waiting for their coffee or their toast, they're just in front of them and it's just going in and they're getting used to seeing that information. Little things like that just help them have access to it, and the more they see their information, the more it will help them. Now, past exam questions are a really good way to get ready for the exam, but it needs to be done in the right way. So they need to build up to doing a past exam paper. So they need to, at first, they want to be doing the questions and using their notes to help them. Right, I've got my notes, can I answer it? Yes, okay. Then they want to start doing, right, well, actually in the exam, I would only have 45 minutes to answer this question, or I'd only have 30 minutes to answer this question. So they then want to try and keep using their notes, but setting themselves a time limit. Can I get it done in the time? Okay. So they're slowly building up to doing a complete paper in the allotted time without notes. Okay. They don't want to go straight into that step and say, oh, I'll start my revision early on. I've got 6 weeks to my exam. I'll do a past paper. I'll give myself an hour and a half, go. Because that'll just be demoralizing because they've not done the prep for that. They've not done the training they need to be successful. So it's building up to that so that 3 or 4 weeks from now, that's the position they're in and they're ready to go. I've mentioned already flashcards and quizzes. They're a great way to learn key facts and a great way for you to be able to test the students. Again, if they've got flashcards made, right, real time, let's have a quick test through your geography flashcards and be harsh on them with those. Make sure their answers are precise. Certainly those students at AS and A2, they expect the answers at that level to be precise with the exact wording used, and so having an answer that's somewhere near probably won't get them the marks at A level. So again, don't be afraid to say, well, hang on, it didn't use those words, it used these words. So make sure you're being precise with them. But again, they're a good way to do 5 minutes of quick testing just to help build their confidence and help them see where their strengths and where their weaknesses are. It's also important that they know the syllabus. So what are they going to be assessed on? And I know from my experience of teaching the Year 11 science, there are aspects of the syllabus that have changed where they've said this is going to be the focus of this paper and that's going to be the focus on the other paper. So students need to make sure they've looked at that and are clear what each paper is on and know what their strengths and weaknesses are to help them plan their revision. But if they've got multiple papers for a subject, so if they're doing GCSE business studies and there's 2 papers, they need to make sure they're very clear. Paper 1 is this aspect, paper 2 is that aspect, so that they're as well prepared as they can be for each paper. So have those conversations with them. What's on that paper? Right. Have you checked that with your teacher? Are you sure? Right. So that they're not in any doubt when they're turning up to the exam that they're properly prepared. Another key thing that they need to look at is when they're doing past exam questions, they need to look at the command term in the question. Does it ask them to describe or does it ask them to explain? Because they're different things that the examiners are asking for if they use those words. So online there are huge sheets summarizing all the command terms. We'll share them on Teams as well, but it's important that they know that if they're asked to explain something, right, they've got to be giving the because aspect. They've got to be explaining how or why it happens. Okay? If they're just asked to describe it, it's just information and processes. Okay? It's not necessarily about the how. So they've got to look at those command terms and know for their subject, what does that question ask me? If it's asked me to compare and contrast, if I've only given similarities, I'm limiting myself to half the marks, most likely. So what are the similarities? What are the differences? So make sure that they look at those and think about those. And when they're doing the exams, they need to make sure they're being careful to use the command terms correctly so they're answering the question properly. So again, talking about that as to saying, well, even if they're doing a past paper, okay, what are the command terms here? What is it asking you to do? And finally, my final bit of advice for the students is, and we say this so often, read the question carefully. So talk to them about making sure they take a breath, read the question. It is so easy for students to be rushing and panicking, okay, and not answer the question or miss something. where the paper says turn over at the bottom, they forget to turn over and they miss a whole question. So they just need to be taking that time and talking about being thorough, reading the questions, looking through the paper at the start, right, what's on it? Okay, let's make a start. When they're looking at those questions, highlight the key terms. What's it asking me to do? Is it explain? Is it describe? Is it compare? If it's an essay-based question, they need to plan their answer. There will be time built into the exam for them to be planning their answer and then writing it. So a couple of minutes before you start writing your essay, just planning it so you think, this is what I'm going to say, will really help you, rather than rushing in on your first paragraph and then thinking, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do. So again, it's talking about making sure they plan their answers. And I teach physics, and I'm always talking to students about double checking the question. The first thing, as soon as you see a question that you think, oh great, I can answer it, take a breath, double check it, read through it again. Is there anything in there that's just trying to trip you up? Is there anything in there that's more complicated than you first thought when you scanned it, when you were looking at it? And if they have to choose a question, take a minute or two to choose the question that they think is the best to do. So in some of the exam papers, they'll have to pick, write an essay on one of these 3 titles. Right? The exam will expect you to spend a little bit of time choosing your essay. So take that time and think carefully so you're confident you're making the right decision. Okay, now the other thing that they need to make sure they do is just use the exam time well. So talk to them about managing their time and managing their stress. If they get stuck on a question in the exam, move on, try and pick up marks elsewhere. Okay? They don't want to spend, they need to learn to manage that time. And so talk to them about that, about staying calm, managing their time in the exams and answering the questions they can before coming back to the ones that they're stuck on. So whether it's maths or science, where you might have 20 questions in the exam paper, they don't want to spend 15, 20 minutes stuck on one question getting no marks. Okay? If they realize they're stuck on it, move on, do a question they can do so that they're not coming to the end of the paper with 30 seconds left, finding that there's a load of marks they could have got that they didn't get to. Okay? And that's a really important thing that we'll be talking about. But again, if you at home are confirming that with them, that would really help. So thank you for your time this evening. One of the things, obviously, that your job as parents is going to be is helping them manage their stresses. Okay, so they are going to be stressed. There are going to be ups and downs for you and them over the next 6-8 weeks, and it's realizing the stress they're under and working with them to try and minimize that, and talking to them about coping with the stress, because it's an important part of the process. The stress, it is, it's part of how they learn to deal with stresses they might face later in life. So talking through them, helping them with coping strategies, and trying not to fall out with them when they're reacting in a way that you'd rather they didn't because of the stress they're under. Okay, so thank you very much for your time. Obviously, if you've got questions regarding the exams or about when they are, where they are, or any of the sort of revision or prep, please don't hesitate to contact me, Miss Allen and Mr. Noel if they're in the 6th form, Mrs. Legg or their form tutor if they're in year 11, or their form tutors. Their form tutors will be going through this sort of thing with them as well, talking to them about the sorts of things they need to be doing and helping them. So please don't hesitate to get in touch if you've got any questions. And thank you very much for your time and have an enjoyable evening.